25 years ago this June, Linda, Morgan, Llewellyn, and I packed our car in Asheville, North Carolina, and began the trek down to Baton Rouge to begin a new professional adventure in our lives with the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. When my good friend John Nolan called to suggest I might be interested in interviewing for the position of the first full-time president of the foundation, I never dreamed that it would evolve into a lifetime of work which has enriched our personal lives and defined my public service. Before launching into a review of the last 25 years of the Foundation's work, I would like to state some obvious but important facts. In the brief time I have, I could not possibly recognize the hundreds of people who have advanced this community in partnership with the Foundation over the past quarter of a century. Please forgive me if I don't mention a particular leader's contribution. The other reality is that I could not possibly mention all the many achievements that this remarkable organization has delivered to our greater community. You will hear themes that wind through the timelines of the Foundation. These are central principles that define our activity. The first theme is that this community foundation has a long-term memory and commitment to the community. We exceed tenures of mayors and governors in our faithfulness to achieve a social benefit. Increasingly, this aspect of the Foundation's personality has become essential to our capability for sustained and systemic change. The second core principle is that communities like ours are built on generations of leadership. We must understand whose shoulders each successive generation stands upon so that we have a deep and clear sense of who we are. Third, we are privileged to hold the high moral ground as the only organization in the region that has the interest of all parties and all people in mind. Other fine organizations have specific constituencies. The Chamber represents business in our region. The United Way represents the not-for-profit sector and specifically human services. The Arts Council represents the arts. The mayor and city parish government embrace a political point of view. Our goal is to advance the quality of life for all people who live in South Louisiana. Finally, as an evolving theme, the Foundation began its life in 1964 based on a plan to attract a science institute, Gulf South Research Institute, to Baton Rouge. As the Community Foundation matured, we increased our commitment to data as the basis for social action. Hand in glove with data comes the principle that planning physical places enables equitable and functional communities. That led to a long and deep commitment to the idea of town and community planning. In 1988, the Foundation achieved several things under the leadership of John Nolan as board chair. The portfolio of some $5 million was turned over to professional management at Premier Bank. The Foundation held its first board retreat in September to plan the next 5 years. And we made a $100,000 grant to fund a search committee to seek a new nationally prominent director for the Pennington Biomedical Research Center. In 1989, at our annual meeting, we invited David Brown, a past vice mayor of New York and a professor at Yale Business School, to give a speech to our annual meeting. At that meeting, David noted that, and I quote, "The greatest social movements in our country have started with private citizens, not government. Historically, government reacts to social movements. The power of society has grown out of private life where people band together to right some wrong, to bring about change, to defend something that's worth defending. But we're in danger of forgetting our history. We have lulled ourselves into thinking that our problems will be solved by government or by someone else. We are missing in the ability to empower ourselves within our families, churches, and private associations in our communities. We must keep our membership alive and healthy. We must work to bring more people in, to find the linkages among those organizations, to urge friends, neighbors, and others to experience the strength in membership. Solutions will not come from someone. They will come from the power individuals share when they join together to create for the common good," close quotes. You will see this theme of civic responsibility resonate through the following 25 years of our work. And finally, in 1989, we made a small grant from the Berwick Fund to support a biracial committee of public college student governments to develop a plan to ease race relations on college campuses. This was a harbinger of other work we would do later, particularly supporting the Citizens Task Force to eliminate the longest-standing court-ordered desegregation case in the country. In 1989, we made two interesting grants that resonate to this day. The first was a $25,000 grant to the Nature Conservancy of Louisiana to purchase the Bluebonnet Swamp. Concurrent with the grant, I worked with Nancy Jo Craig of the Conservancy to convince homeowners of properties in the swamp to donate those properties to the Nature Conservancy. Ultimately, the Conservancy partnered with Breck so that the Breck Bluebonnet Swamp Nature Center was developed. The board took extraordinary action that year to grant $600,000 to the Pennington Biomedical Research Center Foundation in support of Dr. George Bray's employment contract to the tune of $100,000 per year. This grant, combined with the $100,000 we had given for the search just 6 months earlier, represented 12.5% of the total assets owned by the foundation. I should note that, as a bookend to this activity, the Board of Directors of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation last fall awarded yet another $600,000 grant to the Pennington Biomedical Research Center Foundation in order to reinvent the Pennington Center to be more focused on business development. At the end of 1989, we convened a meeting with the help of the United Way and the Arts Council of over 100 not-for-profit organizations to determine what they needed and how the three umbrella organizations could be helpful to them. Out of that work was born the National Society of Fundraising Professionals, which has now become the Association of Fundraising Professionals. In 1990, under Dudley Coates' leadership, we began our foray more firmly into the area of public education when we launched the Academic Distinction Fund, a public education fund to benefit East Baton Rouge Parish. Under the extraordinary leadership of many remarkable public school advocates in Baton Rouge, we raised $3 million in an endowment fund. At least initially, it made small grants to teachers and school-wide impact grants for individual schools. We were motivated by a comment made by the former New Jersey governor, Thomas Keene. He said that, and I quote, "When you put risk capital into schools, you are not just investors with an eye to the bottom line. You are elders looking to the survival of the culture," period, close quotes. In 1991, we continued our work supporting public education by launching the Ascension Fund, a public education fund for the schools in Ascension Parish. Interestingly, that campaign was co-chaired by our current board chair, Matt McKay. We also started Vision Greater Baton Rouge. The idea was that the community needed to have a forward-looking process to identify what our future might look like so that we could guide ourselves to ever healthier and more functional future. We brought in futurist David Pierce Snyder to address various community convocations around what the future should hold for our community. Out of that process came an extraordinary document which began our foray into healthcare. The document was called Healthcare 2005. It was a 15-year-out projection of what healthcare should be in our region. As a footnote, I will tell you that in 1991, the assets of the foundation reached $10 million in total, and we raised over $100,000 in membership dues. Regardless of size, we were doing great work. In 1992, Gordon Pugh took over as chair of the foundation, and we established our first supporting organization, the Wilbur Marvin Foundation. At Wilbur's death 8 years later, it would become our largest single asset. We began quarterly meetings between the executive committees of the Greater New Orleans Foundation and the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. Through those, we learned of the effort by National Housing Intermediary Local Initiative Support Corporation, otherwise known as LISC, and we invited them to come to work in Baton Rouge. LISC undertook a feasibility study in Baton Rouge to see if it could develop an indigenous community development corporation industry in our region. At that time, if you excluded the Mid-City Redevelopment Alliance, there were no CDCs active in the Greater Baton Rouge area. This work speaks to David Brown's comments in our 1989 annual meeting. LISC offered a multi-million-dollar challenge grant to us to establish a 3-year funding stream so that we could begin building locally based community development corporations throughout our underserved communities. John Nolan took the responsibility both for raising the money and for leading the steering committee that ran our redevelopment program in Baton Rouge. From that time to this day, we launched our third education fund, the Iberville Foundation for Academic Excellence, in 1993. In 1994, under the leadership of Gordon Pugh, we helped establish Forum 35 with David Field, Greg Bowser, Fred Dent III, and Shireen Patan as founding directors. David Field was the founding president, and the organization began as a junior membership of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. In 1995, Terrell Brown became the board chair of the foundation. He began voicing his ideas about venture philanthropy being a defining factor of the foundation. He believed, and the board embraced the idea, that taking risks where the benefits are potentially great and the chance for failure is equally great was an inspirational and important role for the foundation to take with part of its portfolio, and certainly with its leadership. In 1996, Breda was founded with the help of the foundation. Susan Turner was its initial board chair. We also launched the Neighborhood Initiatives Program, an asset-based grant-making program which would change the criteria for grant-making from a needs-based model to an asset-based model. This program specifically intended to support community development work, layering on another social program dedicated to helping Indigenous leaders develop their capacity within communities. In 1998, under the guiding hand of Mary Ann Sternberg, the foundation collaborated with the Council for a Better Louisiana to establish the Louisiana Association of Nonprofit Organizations, otherwise known as LANO. During that year, we sent a delegation to West Palm Beach to study the redevelopment of the city center as a precursor to Plan Baton Rouge. Following the site visit to West Palm Beach in '98, we hired and launched Plan Baton Rouge with a team of town planners put together by Andres Duani of Duani Platter Zyberk. Boo Thomas came on board as the staff member responsible for implementing Plan Baton Rouge. Many amazing foundation volunteers led the initiative. In February of 1999, the foundation moved from One American Place into the Washington Fire Company No. 1. My most vivid memory of that move was watching my board chair, Mary Ann Sternberg, unpack and then set up the kitchen in our new headquarters. In April of that year, the foundation began the construction of the Lamar Dixon Expo Center through the Bill and Mary Lee Dixon Donor-Advised Fund. Ultimately, we would spend $55 million in developing this remarkable facility that is now owned and run by Ascension Parish. In 2000, during Ben Miller's tenure, many remarkable things happened. First, the Alvin R. and Louise K. Albritton Memorial Fund was established as the largest unrestricted fund of the foundation through the testaments of Dr. and Mrs. Albritton. The Riley Theater at Swine Palace opened in what was the old swine viewing pavilion at LSU. In collaboration with various community leaders and with Jennifer Riley on point, money was raised to put this shuttered but beautiful building back into use as a spectacular venue for Swine Palace productions. In 2000, the Baton Rouge Area Foundation applied to be selected as a Putnam city so that we could participate in a national survey to determine the level of social capital in our community. We were selected as such and thereby continued the initiative first discussed by David Brown in 1989 that called for people to engage in their communities as an essential part of building healthy and functional places. Finally, in that year, much was done to begin preparation to launch the Arts Block, later named the Shaw Center for the Arts. In 2001, during Virginia Nolan's term as chair, the attack on New York's Twin Towers and on Washington, D.C. occurred. In response to the 9/11 terrorist attack, the foundation gathered and contributed over $1 million in order to support the first responders and the families of first responders in New York who were severely impacted by that event. This was our first step in terms of a financial response to a catastrophic disaster outside of our region. In 2002, also during Virginia's tenure, we moved into our newly constructed building at 402 North 4th Street, the building we currently occupy. With the investment from Paula Manship, we established and funded the Outdoor Cultural Committee to repair, restore and clean public art downtown. Approximately 75 art sculptures were photographed and evaluated. Those that needed to be repaired were sent off for repair and paid for by the fund. The cleaned and repaired artwork is all around us. The wonderful Frank Hayden's on the City Plaza, the Mestroviches, the winning Hebe statue that is on North Boulevard between the City Club and the new courthouse. In 2003, when Kevin Lyle served as our chair, an $18.6 million Hope 6 grant was awarded to the East Baton Rouge Parish Housing Authority thanks to work done by Congressman Richard Baker with the help of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. In interviewing people in Old South about the need to revitalize this central part of our community, we ran into a 10-year-old girl and asked her if she had a home. Her response was poignant. She said, and I quote, "Oh, we have a home. We just need a house to put it in." One of the unheralded achievements of the Hope 6 Award is that Congressman Baker had proposed that small to medium-sized communities should not be punished in the grading system for Hope 6 grants. Congressman Baker argued that the scoring system was tilted toward the larger cities, and he managed to level the playing field so that medium and smaller cities like Baton Rouge would be able to compete. In 2003, Billy Shore, the founder of Share Our Strength, came to speak at the Marsha Kaplan Cantrell Lecture Series. Little did we know that 2 years later, Billy Shore's organization would come back immediately after Katrina and play a significant role in responding to the victims of the hurricane. 2003 was the year in which we partnered with Mayor President Bobby Simpson to buy the Capitol House Hotel so that it can be put back into commerce as the Hilton Baton Rouge Capitol House Hotel through the fine work of the Wilbur Marvin Foundation, a supporting organization of our foundation. Again, following the threat of Healthcare 2005, after determining the healthcare challenges were reaching crisis proportion in our region, the foundation hired the Lewin Group of Washington, D.C. to develop a broad-based and comprehensive community healthcare plan for the region. In 2004, under Kevin Lyle's chairmanship, the foundation celebrated its 40th anniversary, and we began to see change in the manner of our work. We recognized that we were taking on larger, more thorny challenges or opportunities and driving those programs for longer periods of time. Essentially, we were doing fewer projects but more important work for the benefit of our community. In this 40th anniversary year, we engaged ourselves in a seemingly intractable desegregation case by hiring Marie Sneed, an expert attorney from Charlotte, North Carolina, to informally arbitrate among the parties in the longest-running school desegregation case in the country. Brace Godfrey and Christelle Slaughter led the Citizens Task Force, which was given standing by the federal judge to act as a friend of the court. This continued the work we began in 1989 when the Berwick Fund supported the establishment of a biracial committee of public college student governments. As an interesting vignette, the foundation played one of those small but crucial roles when all parties were very close to coming to an agreement on resolving this challenge. Unfortunately, Ms. Sneed needed to be in Washington, D.C. for a breakfast meeting the next morning. Her commercial flight was leaving late afternoon, so Christelle called the foundation to see if we could arrange for Ms. Sneed to fly out on a private aircraft late that evening because her presence was central to getting an agreement. We scampered to arrange for a private aircraft for a handsome sum to fly Ms. Sneed to Washington. It proved to be worth it because that very evening all parties came to agreement and the case was, for all intents and purposes, resolved. In 2005, Thomas Turner became chair of the foundation and the Shaw Center for the Arts was dedicated on March 5th. The foundation was now co-owner of the building with the LSU Foundation and is responsible for the management of the Manship Theater. In the early spring 2005, the foundation organized a trip for our donors to go into the wetlands with Ray Gary and Cece Lockwood, who had collaborated on a book, Marsh Mission. That mission was, as its goal, bringing attention to the vanishing Louisiana wetlands. Here the thread continues in terms of our interest in our vanishing wetlands. Little did we know when we organized this trip that Hurricane Katrina would be hitting Louisiana 4 months later. Ironically, the trip was organized in anticipation of the publishing of the book in September of 2005. Presaging our work in a most powerful way, John Heller, the Deputy Director of Synergos Institute of New York, came to speak to donors of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation on May 9, 2005, about the challenges facing Thailand as a result of the horrible tsunami that had hit the Indian Ocean basin. He talked about the need to build community foundations in Thailand so that there would be places with local knowledge that could respond to the immediate challenges and long-term rebuilding issues that would face that community. Our donors responded generously, and we sent several tens of thousands of dollars to Synergos to help start building a network of trustworthy local partners who would be part of the response and rebuilding infrastructure for Thailand. Clearly a defining moment for the foundation, and too large a story to be told here tonight. On August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the South Louisiana coast, followed only days later by Hurricane Rita. We received the following letter from my counterpart, Angelica Light, in Norfolk, Virginia. Dear Mr. Davies, I am pleased to enclose a check from the Norfolk Foundation for $50,000 to be divided equally between the Hurricane Katrina Displaced Residents Fund and the Hurricane Katrina New Orleans Recovery Fund. There is a little story that you should know that played a part in our making a grant to your Hurricane Katrina funds. In 1855, Norfolk and its neighboring city of Portsmouth, Virginia, were struck by a devastating outbreak of yellow fever that had originated with ill crewmen of a merchant ship docked in Portsmouth. Ultimately, Norfolk lost a third of its citizens to the disease. A relief fund was organized by local civic leaders, and contributions arrived from all over the nation and abroad, which were used to bury the dead and to open hospitals and orphanages. Funds left over from that crisis were invested and the income used for grants for medical relief and support of hospitals until 1986, when the trustees turned the fund, known as the Howard Association Fund, over to the Norfolk Foundation as a discretionary fund. Below are two relevant excerpts from the 1856 report of the Howard Association. And I quote, "We acknowledge with grateful emotions valuable assistance from the state of Alabama, and particularly from the city of Mobile, which set as noble a band of philanthropists as any state or nation can boast of. Nor can we find words to express our thanks to the city of New Orleans for the noble and generous manner in which she responded to our call for help. No sooner had our appeal gone forth than skillful physicians and experienced nurses rushed to our aid. Being the first to volunteer assistance, they were among the last to leave us." Parenthetically, the report lists donations of $559.60 from Alabama and $573.75 from Louisiana. At least 2 doctors came from Mobile and 6 from New Orleans. Singled out was a Miss Annie M. Andrews of Louisiana who came as a nurse. And I quote again, "She shrank from no danger. She performed with the cheerfulness and alacrity every duty assigned to her, and few, very few, even among the sterner sex, can be found who have undergone such fearful risk and faced such imminent danger. She has won for herself a name and a fame that will be immortal. To her, in a particular manner, we do owe a debt of gratitude. It was no doubt her example that induced many others to come. Her name will be handed down to posterity, side by side with that of Florence Nightingale, as examples of heroism, rarely equaled, never surpassed." Close quotes. I wish I could say that Miss Annie Andrews is so remembered, but that is not the case. But the Norfolk Foundation, founded in 1955, serves as part of the institutional memory of our area, and we are pleased to repay our debt of gratitude for the support provided by our sister port cities 150 years ago. In 2006, with Thomas Turner as chair, we recapped the important work that the Foundation did to respond to Katrina. We raised $45 million for relief and recovery. $1.5 million was granted within 2 weeks of the storm hitting. We developed extraordinary partnerships with multiple charities to do different kinds of work. We founded the LRA Support Foundation to master plan devastated communities and ultimately to develop a regional plan for South Louisiana using the extraordinary regional planners Calthorpe and Friganese. In order to achieve this, we asked Plan Baton Rouge to break free from the foundation and form itself as the Center for Planning Excellence, so that it could work outside of Baton Rouge. CPEX did fabulous work in Lake Charles, the New Iberia area, and St. Bernard, and through the award-winning Louisiana Speaks regional plan. In a thread that we'll pick up later, the Foundation, partnering with commercial properties, undertook planning and conceptualizing how to bring the 200-acre Smiley Heights property north of Bon Carré into commerce as a housing community in order to respond to the extraordinary need for housing that had been imposed upon our region post-Katrina. This housing project never came to pass, and the plans were shelved, only to be revived 6 years later as a partnership with the East Baton Rouge Parish Redevelopment Authority. The Hilton Baton Rouge Capitol House Hotel had its grand opening in the summer of 2006. Derek Gordon was hired as president of the Arts Council of Baton Rouge, thanks to a significant 3-year subsidy from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. And we launched the Encourage program to address the mental health challenges, particularly post-traumatic stress disorder, brought by the hurricanes. In 2007, with Christelle Slaughter as board chair, we instituted the Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence. Commercial Properties began the renovation of the Struby's building into the Struby's restaurant and the construction of the 111 apartment building that lines the back entry to the Shaw Center for the Arts. In 2007, we launched the North Shore Community Foundation. We began funding, with the City Parish and the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, the Red Stick Animation Festival as a way of promoting the digital arts in Baton Rouge. Also in 2007, the Foundation hired Booz Allen Hamilton to do a major airport study to determine whether or not a new international airport is feasible to serve the Baton Rouge and New Orleans areas. The report concluded that neither the Baton Rouge Airport nor the New Orleans International Airport had met their saturation point and were unlikely to hit saturation levels for another 20 years. The result was that Baton Rouge and New Orleans became jointly invested in ensuring that the Louis Armstrong International Airport in New Orleans is improved so that it can better serve both communities. In 2008, under Christelle's continued leadership, we launched the Community Foundation of Southwest Louisiana. We published the first City Stat Report, a quality of life indicator that tracks, over time, how we are doing in critical social areas that impact the quality of life in the greater Baton Rouge region. In 2008, continuing our commitment to community development, the Foundation launched the East Baton Rouge Parish Redevelopment Authority, with John Noland as the founding and current chair. Walter Monsor serves as the first and current president and CEO. The community development effort in Baton Rouge has gone from focusing on small, community-based organizations that have no capacity to deliver housing on a large scale to a much larger, more centralized authority that can develop significant volume to dramatically change the housing landscape for our community. It's a 20-year evolution. In 2008, we celebrate 10 years of Plan Baton Rouge. We recognize that over $1.5 billion in capital investment in our city center has resulted from this initiative. To keep us humble, Gustav smashes into Louisiana, causing $10 billion in damages. The Baton Rouge Area Foundation raises $750,000 with the help of Governor Bobby Jindal and quickly responds to human needs. In 2008, we raised the old Walmart on Perkins Road, and the Acme Oyster House opens on that site. In 2009, with Elise Greer as our board chair, the foundation partners with Mayor President Kip Holden, Governor Jindal, and LSU to open the EA Sports Testing Center in Baton Rouge on the LSU campus. Troubled by the unacceptable level of euthanasia and the inhumane treatment of animals at the local animal shelter, the foundation organized stakeholders and interested parties in companion animal welfare to initiate No Kill Baton Rouge. It was a rocky start, but ultimately resulted in a significantly better-run shelter that saves over 60% of the animals in its care, as opposed to euthanizing better than 80% of those animals. In 2009, we published an interview with LSU researcher Harry Roberts, who reports that even if diverted in order to redeposit sediment, there is not sufficient sediment in the Mississippi River to save Louisiana's coast because of the rising sea levels. Our engagement in this subject begins to intensify. In 2010, still under Elise's leadership, the Redevelopment Authority attained $60 million in tax credits to invest in the inner city and accomplished remarkable works with these funds. The Ford Foundation funded a study to determine whether or not passenger rail between Baton Rouge and New Orleans was viable. CPEX and BRAF were on point for our region. Still in 2010, the next disaster occurs with a BP explosion and leak. The Foundation responded by immediately establishing funds, and comedian Stephen Colbert establishes the Gulf of America Fund at the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. Late that year, the Foundation negotiated with BP, the White House, and the Department of Justice to start the $100 million Rig Workers Assistance Fund at the Foundation. Matt McKay became chair in 2011, and the Foundation became more engaged in developing Smiley Heights in order to build training facilities for auto mechanics and a more general high school training facility that would provide a joint degree with the East Baton Rouge Parish school system. Culminating 2 years of work, the Foundation formally founded the Water Institute of the Gulf in December of 2011, chaired by Kevin Riley Jr., with Charles Chip Grote serving as its president and CEO. The Water Institute is charged with providing unassailable science so that Louisiana's master plan to protect and redevelop the coast can be implemented with the best science available. The Baton Rouge Area Foundation's assets surpassed $600 million in 2011, and the Shaw Center for the Arts began a $2 million renovation. In 2012, still under Matt's leadership, Galatoire's construction broke ground at Perkins Road and Acadian Thruway, and the Foundation announced that Commercial Properties had signed a lease with Trader Joe's to open at that site in the fall of 2013. Our beloved founder, John W. Barton Sr., died on March 3rd at Beech Grove Plantation in Wilson, Louisiana. New Schools for Baton Rouge was founded under the leadership of Jenny Riley to support the Achievement Zone in North Baton Rouge, and the Foundation raised, through its generous donors, $750,000 a year in seed money for 3 years to sustain this critical new enterprise. So the adventures continue. The next 25 years promise to be years of great economic prosperity. Our new challenge will be to respond to growth and opportunity. That may prove to be a more difficult scenario than addressing societal issues during hard times. Thank you for the past quarter of a century, and here's to the next chapter in the Foundation's life.